So she didn't say this dramatically. She said it very quietly, like she was admitting something she thought she was the only one struggling with. And she said to me, I don't think people actually understand what I do. And to be clear, this wasn't someone who had been in the business for 5 minutes. She had clients, she had proof, she had results. But when she told me that every time someone asks her what she does for a living, she could feel her brain doing a little bit of a scramble. Do I say operations? Do I say systems? Do I say project management? Do I say I run the business behind the business? And then she would panic and default to the one thing that felt safe, right? Tools. She'd say something like, oh, I do ClickUp setups, or I manage launches, or I handle the back end, which is true, but it's also not what makes someone hire you as an OBM. And then she said the part that really matters. She said to me, I feel invisible. But I also don't want to become one of those people online. You know the vibe, right? Posting every day like it's a full-time job, dancing around the point, selling without saying anything. She goes, I don't want to perform. I just want the right people to get it. And that tension right there is why we're having this conversation, because most OBMs don't have a marketing problem. They have a positioning clarity problem. And if visibility feels heavy, awkward, or forced, it's usually because you're trying to be seen before you're being clear. So if you've ever thought, I'm great at my work, why is it so hard to talk about what I do? This episode is for you. So she wasn't invisible because she wasn't posting. She was invisible because every time she did show up, she was accidentally training people to see her as support, helpful, capable. The person you ask for a template from, right? Not the person you hand the reins to. So in this episode, I'm going to show you how to fix that without turning your life into a content factory. Hey, and welcome back to the OBM Show. I'm Sarah Noked, and this is the place where we talk about what it actually looks like to build and lead a sustainable online business management practice, not just on paper, but in real life. So here we talk about the parts that don't always make it into those highlight reels, right? The messy middle, the blurry roles, the leadership decisions that you're making quietly, often without much support. So whether you are transitioning from corporate, moving from VA work into the OBM role, or already working with clients and trying to do this more intentionally, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's conversation. So most OBMs didn't choose this work because they love being visible, right? Right? We didn't get into operations because we wanted to be influencers. We got into it because we like being behind the scenes. We like to solve problems. We like making messy things make sense. We like substance. So when the advice becomes just post more, it really does feel misaligned. Because if we're being honest, a lot of online marketing feels like performance. And OBMs are allergic to performance. We all want to be taken seriously. We all want to be respected. We want to be hired because we lead well, not because we went viral. But here's what we see over and over again. OBMs trying to market themselves before they've defined and clarified how they lead. So visibility really turns into you trying to explain your way into being hireable. So you end up listing tools, or you end up like sort of narrating tasks, or you end up just giving a behind the scenes play-by-play that makes sense to you, but doesn't anchor for the person who you're talking to, for the client, right? And then visibility feels exhausting. Not because visibility is inherently draining, although that might be a topic for another podcast/YouTube episode, but because you are trying to be seen without a spine, right? Without a spine and without a clear, this is what changes when you hire me. Without a clear, this is what level I lead at. And that, my friends, is what we're going to try to fix today, right? We see this all the time with these OBMs coming from corporate roles, right? The project manager, the operation lead, the chief of staff. And honestly, Those corporate, escapees, the ones who come straight into the OBM role, are some of the best OBMs, hands down, that I have ever seen. Because you already know how to lead, right? You've already learned a lot of the tricks of the trade. You know how to communicate. You've probably walked into a meeting with a spreadsheet and a plan and saved everyone's nervous system, right? But here's the weird part. In corporate, your authority is baked in. Your title carries weight. Your role has edges. There's an organizational chart. There are departments. And there's someone else whose job it is to worry about HR, to worry about the IT, to worry about legal, to worry about payroll and vendor contracts, and the CEO's existential crisis. When you move online, all of that disappears, right? So one OBM told us, I had this great title before. Now I feel like I have to justify myself constantly. And that sentence was as for everything, right? Because when you feel like you have to justify yourself, you over-explain, right? She started writing those long captions that were, basically SOPs, like genuinely helpful. They were educational. They were thorough. They were also accidentally posting or positioning herself as a free help desk, right? So she would share tools and templates and processes in her post, maybe some behind the scenes details, like a step-by-step breakdown, hoping that people would connect the dots and go, oh, wow, she is the real OBM deal. But what happened instead was predictable. People loved it. They would DM her. They would ask her what software she recommends. They would ask her if she has a template. They would ask her to look at their ClickUp. And then they'd say, you're so helpful, and refer her out for VA work. Meanwhile, she's sitting there thinking like, I'm not trying to be a VA. I'm trying to lead operations. So that, in a nutshell, is the visibility trap, right? When your content is all process and no positioning, you become educational, really, and not contractable. Visibility doesn't fail because you're inconsistent. It fails because your message doesn't anchor. And I want you to hear this in the most loving, compassionate way. If your audience cannot quickly answer what problem you solve, at what level you lead, or what changes they can expect when working with you, then more content just creates more noise. Okay? Because the person reading it is doing mental gymnastics. They're trying to place you. Are you support? Are you leadership? Are you tech? Are you strategy? And if they can't place you quickly, they default to the safe assumption. They'll assume that you are execution, right? And this is why OBMs burn out trying to show up. They keep posting and posting and posting, and nothing really lands. Not because they're not smart and not because they're not capable, but because they're trying to be visible without being positioned. Now, one of the OBMs inside of our community barely posted at all, right? Not because she didn't care, but because she hated feeling salesy. She told me, I can talk about my clients all day, but talking about myself feels gross. And honestly, I can so relate to this. A lot of OBMs really feel this way because we're sort of trained to make things a mission, about the mission, the client, the team, the outcome, not about us. So we didn't force her into a posting schedule. We didn't say, just do the reels. We handed her a 30-day content calendar and we prayed. A lot of OBMs feel that way because we are trained to make things about the mission, the client, the team, the outcome, and not about us. So we didn't force her. We didn't force this OBM into a posting schedule. We didn't say, just do more reels. We didn't hand her a 30-day content calendar and pray. We fixed the foundation. So we really got clear on what she actually does at the leadership level, right? Not tasks, not tools, leadership. And once she got clear, something shifted. So she stopped talking like a service menu, right? She stopped making posts that sounded like, here are 7 ways to do a thing. And she started to sound and write like an operator. She started naming what she was seeing. She started saying things like, When your team keeps missing deadlines, it's rarely a motivational issue. It's usually a client clarity and ownership issue. Or if your launch plan lives in 5 different places, your nervous system will never trust the process. Or if every decision still routes through you, you're not scaling, you're just adding people to the chaos. And then she sent me a message that literally made me laugh out loud. And she said to me, I just had someone book a call with me and they said, I feel like you're already in my business in a non-creepy way. Okay, it's really cute. But, that's what happens when visibility matches how you lead. It stops sounding like content and starts sounding like competence, right? And the truth is that sustainable visibility does 3 things at once. It reflects how you lead. And this is very simple, right? It reflects how you lead, it reinforces your boundary, and it attracts aligned clients. And no, it doesn't require you to become a full-time content creator, okay? But here's the thing. Most OBMs do not have time to play the content game, right? You're already running operations for somebody else. You're already holding a lot. If visibility becomes another place where you're over-delivering and under-protecting yourself, it really does defeat the whole point, my friends, right? The goal isn't volume. The goal is coherence. The most effective OBM visibility usually comes from you naming what you see, the pattern you notice behind the scenes. Those bottlenecks that repeat across different businesses and the leadership problems that quietly cost business owners time, money, and sanity. And when you share those things, you're not performing, right? You're translating. You're saying, here's what actually happens. Here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. And people who need an OBM will go, oh my God, that is exactly me. Because you're not talking about tools. You're not talking about, impact. You're not talking about relief. You're talking about what changes. This kind of content is also very repeatable, right? You can reuse it. You can expand on things. You can almost tell the same story in a different way because it's coming from your actual brain and not a content calendar that's forcing you into trends. And that is why this strategy is sustainable. So let me give you a simple rhythm that you can use without turning your life into a marketing department, right? And you can steal this, you can use it forever because it really does work as a post. It works as a podcast segment. It works as a YouTube video. It works as an email. And it works even if you are showing up once a week. So here's the rhythm. You start by naming a pattern, something that you keep seeing showing up in businesses. And it could be something along the lines of, here's what I see happening behind the scenes when a business owner says they're scaling, but everything still relies on them. And then you give a quick moment from the trenches, not a full case study, just a snapshot, a decision you had to make, a conversation that you had, a recurring issue that you've seen across clients. And the goal of that moment is not to impress anyone, thankfully, right? Thankfully. The goal is to let the right person go, wait, that is literally my situation. And then you land it by naming the cost of not fixing it to your client, right? So what does it create for your client if they don't fix this problem? Well, it creates burnout. It creates chaos. It creates team frustration and turnover. It creates missed revenue. And then you name what changes when it is handled, right? That transformation that we provide our clients with, relief, leverage, momentum, right? That's it. And notice what we didn't do. We didn't try to teach the whole situation. We didn't try to give away our entire brain for free. We positioned you as the person who sees the real problem and knows what to do with it. Now, if you are thinking, okay, Sarah, but I don't know what patterns to name, That's not usually a content problem. That's a clarity problem. And that's why community matters. Because when you are surrounded by other like-minded OBMs, you start noticing your own leadership patterns, your own leadership voice. You start hearing how you think. You start seeing what you naturally notice. And visibility stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like communication. Now, if you are a business owner listening to this podcast and thinking, yes, this is exactly what I need someone who thinks like this, I just want you to know you don't have to guess. That is why we built the accredited OBM directory over at obmschool.com/directory, because there are a lot of people online calling themselves OBMs, but an accredited OBM that has been trained to lead operations with structure, strategy, and sustainable, not just executing tasks, not just keeping things afloat, but creating actual operational leadership that your business can grow on. So if you are ready to hand the reins over and want to chat more with us about bringing that trusted partner on your team, head on over to obmschool.com/matchmaking, and we will match you with the accredited OBM who fits your business, your stage, and your style. So if visibility for you as an OBM has felt draining or forced, let's reframe it. You do not need to perform. You need to be clear. So you will find a ton of resources to help you clarify your positioning and leadership voice at obmschool.com/resources. If you want to work more closely with us through training, community, or professional development, I invite you to explore our programs over at obmschool.com/programs. And if you want to learn more about what it looks like to fully step into the OBM role with confidence and clarity, you can explore our OBM accreditation program at obmaccreditation.com. It is completely free to apply, and enrollment is currently open for our upcoming live cohort. So if you've been circling this for a while and you're ready to get the details, head over there or book a call with our team. You'll find all those details there as well to talk it through and see if it is the right fit. However you found this episode, I'm really glad that you are here. These conversations exist to help you build a business that actually supports your life. I will see you in the next episode.